Hello everyone and welcome to Daria Draws. Today we are tackling a full body portrait. So it will be important not only to capture the facial expressions but also gestures and body language. As you know, that can say a lot about the person without even looking at their face. As my model, I have chosen my husband while he was reading, a perfect example for our task. And I will be making the portrait in oils and walking you through the process a little bit and giving you some tips along the way. So without further ado, let's dive in. For the first stage of the painting, which is going to be mainly drawing and defining some of the values, I have prepared a quite neutral palette, so it's not very warm, not very skin-like, but it will be enough for the purpose of creating a drawing that would later on be the base of the second stage. Pre-toning the canvas always helps with just getting rid of all those whites that are reflective so that you have a more neutral base to work with. My drawing process always starts with roughly marking all of the essential elements of the composition, and while it is still possible to move them around, I do that if I got any of that wrong. When it comes to human figure, of course, anatomy is very important, and so are the proportions of every individual person. Some people have longer torsos, some people have longer legs, longer limbs in general. So these are the more specific things that you have to keep in mind when painting a specific person. Also with the proportions, trick is to simply measure. If you are painting from life or from picture, you can simply measure everything with the head, which is the universal standard of many things. Also, as I have mentioned in my previous video, which by the way, if you haven't watched, you can do that here, silhouette and overall outlines are very important. That's how we identify somebody, and so is the movement. So a person may find it very comfortable to sit in a certain position, and so certain lines appear that sort of kind of guide our eye and give the figure its shape. The scene I chose for my portrait is in our living room on the couch, and above my husband will be a lamp under which he likes to read. I'm slowly starting to break down the figure into darks and lights, very roughly, of course applying the shadows first with that same dark brown, and that is just going to help me to kind of create the three-dimensional scene and to understand whether I'm going into the right direction. Don't be afraid, especially at this stage, to make mistakes because you can fix them very quickly and very easily. And it's better to do so early on than when you're almost done and then you figure out that something's really off. And of course, the main focus is going to be on the figure, and the overall surrounding is just there to support and to give a little more atmosphere to the painting. Also, at this stage of the drawing, I'm not trying to go into details too much, just because I will be applying color later on and most of those things will be covered up anyway. But it is important to find the correct placement of each structure, such as the fingers, the hand overall, the tilt of the head, and how the feet are tucked in, and etc. I'm slowly making certain edges look a little sharper, making the figure have a little more structure as well. So it will be a little easier for me later on to apply the colors and to soften any of those edges up. Also here the contrast is very vivid because of the light source. So this lamp is the only light source there is in the room at the moment of the painting. And that's why it is kind of easier from one side to have a very logical one source lighting, but from the other it creates a very high contrast. So all of the structures and all of the bones and everything is very much highlighted and needs to really be structured well. Otherwise it will just be lost. I'm not doing too many details at this point, as I just need to cover overall the body with just a little bit of those shadows and lights in the correct places. Of course, I will be going on top of this layer later on, but I just need to give myself a good base that I can later work on. When applying color, I like to start with the darkest parts as well, as it is easier to move from there towards the light. Normally the hands have a slightly darker hue than the rest of the body, as well as the chest area, the nose. It's just those parts that naturally tan a little more, and as my husband is very pale, even a little more pale than me, with a colder undertone, these kind of tan lines show even more on him. And of course the colors are not exactly what you're going to see at the end, as I am going to prepare another palette, which is similar but it has its nuances. And for here I just wanted to create a very united color palette, which contained all of the actual colors we have in our living room, and of course the focal point being the flesh tone and the skin and all those structures in the body. The knees are the most challenging part here, just because of their positioning and how the light is hitting them, as well as the fact that they're right at the center and they're the most frontal point of the whole portrait. So I really needed to make them work and make them work well, because the face here is not saving anything as he is looking down and most of it is in the shadow. So definitely more contrast and more structure it would be in the hands and in the knees. And with the light gray, I'm going over the blanket that we have in the living room. And even though it is the lightest thing in the composition, it is not going to be the focal point whatsoever. It's just going to be there. And it's not even white, it's like a very beigey gray sort of color, and it just appears to be the lightest right now. So that was the first kind of stage that I have done in February, and since then I didn't have the chance to actually finish the painting, and I did now, so I'm doing this video now, and let's see how after such a long break I continue. So this is the second palette. As you can see, it has a lot more fleshy tones to it. It's a bit warmer, but I didn't want to have too many tones at the same time, just to keep the palette a little more cohesive. And I would rather mix in between the shades to create something that I would possibly need like in the middle. So after glazing and muting certain things that don't need to be as bright and actually highlighting the shadows, more like deepening the shadows, I'm moving on to the actual work, which is going to be the details, the actual flesh tones, and making everything look very soft, yet structured. And by structured, I do mean like applying the appropriate edges, so some of them will be soft, some of them will be a little sharper, and I want really the bones to show so that it's not just a flesh bag and it's something that has the skeleton and all the muscles inside of it. So to create a softer flesh, I'm using very soft transitions between the shadows and lights. Our skin is always very smooth, even if it has hair on it. And it's just everything is very rounded. We don't really have any harsh edges in our body, except if like two shapes kind of touch or overlap, then you could have a little bit of a harsh edge there. And even though the blanket and the couch are just on some kind of supporting roles, they still need to have a little amount of detail to just look a little more believable. And since this is a slightly more realistic portrait, it has to be all kind of in the same style, I guess. So it would be kind of wrong to just keep the blanket very plain. I feel like adding a bit of shadow really helps with the dimension and to really feel like it's an actual place that exists. And now for the main source of light, it is going to be like a light spot, but I don't want to have any extra details there. I just want it to be like, you know, a sun in the corner of a kid's drawing sort of thing. So the main focus is not taken away from the figure. And just to add a little bit of detail and a pattern so that not everything is kind of plain and done with big strokes, I am adding the pattern of the pajamas that my husband is wearing. And thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you would like to stay tuned for the upcoming videos, or if you would like to watch more content right now, you can click on either of those, and I will see you in the next video.